Welcome to the BamCam podcast with Jack Burnette and Allison Castellano from Eater Financial Wellness, a financial advisory practice at RFG Advisory. In this podcast, we explore how life and financial well-being are intertwined. We'll look into areas concerning motivation and attitude, financial planning, investing, and much more. Our goal is to empower you with the information and resources you need to help manage your money and strive toward the life you've always wanted. So sit back, relax, and join us on this journey of uncovering your true self and achieving financial independence.
Hello and welcome to the BamCam podcast with your host, Jack Burnette. Today, we have some very special guests. Is that right, Jack?
We certainly do. Listeners to the podcast know that we talk about trying to achieve peace and happiness in our life, and that is rooted in wellness on multiple dimensions. Not only financial wellness, since we are financial advisors, but also physical wellness, emotional wellness, and spiritual wellness. And I believe they're all intertwined. And so my fitness journey and commitment to physical wellness began in 2009. I was very much a couch potato and not active. And it started in running, and it led me to two great lifelong friendships with our guest today. I want to first introduce Randy Lyle. Randy was one of the first friends I made when I started with a running group here in Birmingham called Run University, led by Danny Harrelson. And Randy and I spent many miles running early in the mornings for a number of years. But Randy has been a good friend for most of those 15 years, and that's something that's very special. And then we're also are blessed to have Meb Keflezighi, and Meb, who lives in Tampa. Randy and our good friend David Kahn met Meb, I think, late in 2010, shortly after Meb won the 2009 New York Marathon. They met in Las Vegas at an expo, and a friendship developed, and then I got dragged into the friendship a year or so later. Meb is one of the most accomplished runners of all time. Meb is the 2004 silver medalist at the Athens Olympics. He won the 2009 New York Marathon, and he won the 2014 Boston Marathon. And on top of that, he's a good guy. Both of these gentlemen are some of the finest people I know. He is a devoted father, husband, also son and brother to, how many siblings? You've got 9 siblings, Meb?
One of 11.
One of 11. Okay, so he's got 10. And of course, Meb's brother, Merhowie, is his agent, sports agent extraordinaire, and is also a dear friend. He's not on the podcast with us. One thing that ties us all together is our strong Christian faith. And we're going to tell you a little bit of a story that really had a profound impact on me and my spiritual journey. And I think it did Randy as well, and Meb as well. In 2013, Randy and I had the opportunity to run the Boston Marathon, and that is kind of like the holy grail for runners. It's mostly reserved for fast runners that you have to qualify for Boston. I know, Randy, you and I, if we say we ran Boston, people say, "Oh, you must be fast." And
They're wrong.
We qualified. That's not Randy or me. By the way, Meb is very fast, and he didn't have to qualify. He got invited. But we were charity runners. You ran for the Meb Foundation, raising money, and I ran for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Over $500 million has been raised by charity runners at Boston. And Meb was injured in 2013. And although you were there in Boston as an ambassador for John Hancock, I guess, Meb, but because we had dinner the night before the race and everything. And it was a wonderful weekend in 2013. It was magical for us in all sense until 2:49 p.m. And that's when the bombings occurred. So it came kind of crashing to a halt. Randy, where were you in the race? And when the bombings occurred, and kind of walk us through what happened to you.
So I was probably around mile 25 when the bombings occurred. I'm not sure exactly where I was, but I crested a hill and noticed that the police had blocked the road, stopped us from running. I had no idea what had happened. So I figured my wife, who was back in Birmingham, if she was tracking me, I had passed all the milestones except the finish. I'd already passed all the way through the 40K. So I got thinking if she was worried about me, that I should let her know that we had been stopped. So I pulled my phone out, sent her a quick text, and told her that we had been stopped and I would text her back when I finished. She texted me back immediately, and just with a text that said something along the lines of that there was an explosion at the finish line. And I had no idea what that was. I thought it was probably a transformer blowing. And so my thought was, I hope they clean that up pretty quick so we can get back to running.
It's a normal thought for a runner at
Right.
that stage of a race.
And then her second text, though, said, it looks like terrorism. Lots of people hurt, maybe killed. That's when I knew I wasn't going to finish the race. I didn't know what to do at that point, but we just were stopped there by the police until somebody came and got us.
Now, did you try to call her? Because they took the phones down.
I did call her, and I got through the first time for about a few minutes, and I told her to call my parents because I knew my dad might also be, at least he would see the news.
Right.
And I wanted her to tell them that I was okay. But after that, my phone wouldn't work anymore.
Right. Meb, you had been at the finish line area and just before the bombings went off. So walk us through what happened with you with the bombings.
Well, first, it's great to be on the podcast, be reunited as of all friendships. But yes, in 2013 Boston Marathon, I went to the grandstand because usually I don't get to see my fellow runners like yourself and many others that are charity runners or qualified runners. So I wanted to be at the finish line, and I asked Howie, my brother, to give me a pass to the grandstand because I wasn't just comfortable being in the hotel. So I was there for 4+ hours. I got cold. My good friend Rob Hill gave me a jacket, and then I waited and waited and waited, and then I had an appointment. I believe it was 4 o'clock. So I said, I better go. I need about an hour and 10 minutes or so. So it was 5 minutes or so before the bombing occurred that I left from the finish line to the Fairmont Copley. And I was in the lobby when I got the news. I was with the John Hancock people that said, hey, there's a bombing on Boston Street. I'm like, how can it be? I left my brother there. There's thousands of people finishing. So it was very disturbing. It was very catastrophic and just devastating news to hear. I just threw the F-bomb and stopped crying. And yeah, and then that evening, Bonnie Ford from ESPN.com asked me, are you scared to come back next year? Or are you thinking of bringing your family? What's in your mind or process of thinking? I said, I hope to be healthy enough to win it for the people. So that's when I kind of like set the goal for me. I need to come back for 2014.
Yeah. It's my experience. I was a little bit behind Randy. I believe we started in the same wave.
We did.
But I was probably around mile 24. And before we got stopped, I had just crossed the last electronic checkpoint, and I was running reasonably well. And I pulled out my phone to check with my wife, Barbara, who I knew was at the finish line, just to give her an estimate of what my finish time would be. So she'd be watching for me. As a guest of John Hancock, she had grandstand seating. So I was going to give her an update, and she sent me a text. I pulled out my phone, and she had just texted me, and it said, there's been a bomb at the finish line. And I thought, wow, that's strange. And so I was running alongside a gentleman, and he saw that I was looking at my phone, and I said, that's strange. He said, is everything okay? And I said, my wife just said there's been a bomb at the finish line. And like you, Randy, he said, I hope they get it fixed by the time we get there. That's kind of the mindset of a marathoner. When you're at mile 24, all you're thinking about is how awesome it's going to be. Turning right on Hereford Street and then left on Boylston, and you go about, about 600 meters maybe on Boylston Street, and how awesome that is. It's just a wall of sound and everything. So it was a natural reaction for that gentleman, but lo and behold, in just within a few minutes, we got stopped as well. And then it was very chaotic. There were a lot of rumors. There were it was just confusion. I remember a whole gamut of emotion, from anger to sadness to regarding how this could be. And the city of Boston and the citizens of Boston this is their day and their race. It's run on Patriots Day, which is the third Monday in April. Every day, all the schools are out. And this horrible event, really, the people of Boston and the communities surrounding Boston took this personally. And it was very hectic to see the manhunt ensue to capture the perpetrators over the next few days. And it was almost surreal. So we're going to fast forward to 2014. And Meb, you mentioned that you immediately made a determination that you wanted to come back in 2014 and to win. Randy, did you immediately decide you wanted to come back?
I did. It was a situation that I didn't think I would get to do that again. And I felt like I'd been robbed from the chance to cross the finish line.
Right.
Because that's an iconic finish line. It's there year round on the street.
Yeah.
So I think pretty much immediately as I was trying to make my way back to my hotel after everything kind of happened, and they got us back to where we could get our check bags and all that stuff, and I could get my jacket. And I think on the walk back, I was just like, if I get a chance to come back, I'm coming back.
Yeah. I was the same way. And in fact, one thing I failed to mention is that when Barbara was in the grandstand, she was about 60 feet away from the bomb. She had a front row seat to the bomb, the first bomb that went off that happened right in front of her, just directly across the street. To see all that carnage that occurred, it was really amazing. She mentioned her ears rang from the sound of the explosion for about a week before they kind of stopped ringing. So we felt very fortunate that she wasn't hurt or impacted. So in 2014, Meb, you're determined. You're also old at that point. Of course, you'll never be as old as I am, Meb. But as professional runners go, you were approaching your 39th birthday. You were about 2 weeks short of your 39th birthday when you ran the race, but you're preparing to run the Boston Marathon is a months-long planning. What did you do to kind of get your mind and body ready to run in 2014?
Jack and Randy, it's a constant reminder of the bombing that occurred on April 15, 2013, that when you travel or when you are in San Diego, you see constant the Boston Strong reminder sweaters or the B hat, and constant reminders, oh, I need to train, I need to train. And I'm a believer. And when I'm in Mammoth Lakes, I'll be running and I would cross. I'm like, help me win this race. You're thinking those things. And as you travel, you only see deers, or maybe you see one car in the 15-mile, 20-mile run that you do in the desolated area of Mammoth Lakes and the mountains. So you constantly have this dialogue, but you hear things, you see things. But on race day, like you said, I was 2 weeks shy of my 39th birthday. I was the 15th fastest person in the field. And my last marathon prior to that was not very good. I hit the wall in New York and finished like 22nd or 23rd. And according to experts, I had less than 1% chance of winning. But what was profound was that the friendship that we have made over the years. And then I remember you guys came to the hotel, and then I had my silver medal with me. I had my New York City Marathon medal with me, and we discussed. And I remember with the prayer that you can go more into it as what we said. But I said, wouldn't it be nice to have that third medal? And then I remember David Kahn, our friend who's not here on the podcast, also said, you win tomorrow, you're going to be the biggest guy in the nation. It's going to be all over the cover of sports, not over the sports, but on the cover of every front newspaper. So there was those things. And obviously, and to have you guys, you can elaborate on that, but the prayers that we have kinship of the good Lord to have on our side. And you can say what you prayed for, Jack. You were the leader of that.
Yeah.
But it was just going to the starting line. There was a will, there's a desire, but not everything aligns together, but it happens in God's time.
But you almost focused exclusively on doing this for the city of Boston and healing and that sort of thing. You really had a different motivation for this race than any of your other professional races.
Absolutely. I wrote the victim's name on my bib, which I suppose temper with as an elite athlete. It kind of took a little bit of risk, but yeah, no, so there were 30, including you guys, and then 36,000 other people wanted to do something really positive on both sense of revenge and then redemption, you can say, to be able to come back and say, hey, we own the streets and on Patriots Day. So it was personal.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I kind of felt that way too. Randy, you and I, one thing that was also, I guess, interesting, it was Easter weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So there was there were memorials everywhere, all over town, and they were very moving. There were a lot of acknowledgement of particularly the 4 victims: Martin Richard, it was the 8-year-old little boy; Lindsay Lou, Crystal Campbell, and then Sean Collier, who was the policeman that was killed by the perpetrators. And so there were memorials all over town. It was a very emotional and type of atmosphere. I've never seen anything quite like it in Boston in 2014. Randy, your wife, Caroline, was able to join us for that trip. And we went to the John Hancock dinner the night before. And then Merhowie, Meb's brother, sent you a message, I believe, said, Meb wants you to come up to his room.
That's right.
So we knocked on Meb's door, hotel room there at the Fairmont Hotel, which is where our dinner was with John Hancock, but where all the professional runners, or most of them, were housed. And Meb and his beautiful wife, Jordanis, were there. And we visited for a little bit. One thing that I remember, Caroline asked Meb, are you excited about tomorrow? I think that's what she said.
That's exactly what she said.
And Meb, do you remember what you said?
Not quite either right now.
You were hesitant. You kind of paused and you were hesitant. And then Caroline said again, you're not excited for tomorrow? And you said, it's going to hurt.
As all marathons do, right?
Yeah. So if anybody reads your book, 26 Marathons, and reads about what you did go through in winning this race, they would know, because you had struggled with, I think, a hamstring injury coming in some of your training and everything. You also had a foot injury or a foot wound or something that was giving you problems and everything. But professional runners go through to win one of these races, or even to just compete in one of these races, is rather amazing. But I remember vividly that your response was not what I expected. And it wasn't what Caroline expected either. So you showed us about your new shoe that Skechers had developed for you for the race and everything. So we were excited about that. And then after visiting for maybe 15 or 20 minutes in the room, and we knew you needed to go to get some sleep and that sort of thing, and we needed to go back to our rooms also and do that, I asked if we could lead a prayer. And we all stood and held hands. Randy, what do you remember about that?
I just remember the prayer was a pretty simple prayer. I mean, it wasn't, I'm not to deny what it was, but it was just a simple prayer that we would all run our best, especially Meb's training would show, and that he would do the best he could. And
we prayed for the people of Boston.
The people of Boston. I mean, it was because
victims.
the weekend had been so somber up to that point.
Right.
That we prayed that it would be a great day for the city.
Right.
And so it wasn't a real long prayer, but I thought it was a very powerful prayer.
And I ended with saying, and God, if it's your will, deliver Meb to victory.
Yeah.
Amen. And that was how we ended the prayer. So Meb, the next morning you wake up, it's race day. Walk us through a little bit of your race.
Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful prayer and powerful prayer. And we had the medal and going to the Boston Marathon, that was the only thing that was missing in my resume per se. And going to the race, I remember Greg Myers, before I left the Fairmont Copley to the bus, he goes, Meb, you're the smartest one up there. You're going to get it done. Go execute. I don't want to be the last American to be known winning this race. So he kind of gave me his blessing, and he was the last winner of as an American, and I want to say 83, sorry.
Yeah.
And then I'm basically going to the bus. It's like, why not me? God help me do my prayers that I do. And this is a time for the city. This is a time for the runners. And I remember sending a tweet that said 36,000 under the umbrella of the Boston Strong, and we'll see what happens to get the city back. And then on the race day, when we got there in the morning at the Korean church, I remember I had my eyes closed, listening to music. I'm on my back with my feet up, Mary Wittenberg, who was the CEO for the New York Road Runners, took a picture of it. In fact, Howie sent me this morning to say, hey, where's that picture? He wants to see that. And so that's what I was thinking. But then right before I left the starting line, my coach and mentor, Bob Larson, I said, don't worry. We talked about confidence. You can run 206, 207 on this course. You did that in one leg when you had in 2010, when you had a ruptured quad. You ran 209, so you're very capable of doing. And then I say, okay, sounds great. I'm 39 years old almost now.
Uh-huh.
And so basically said, don't worry, you're not going to see me into the last 5K of the race. But I also have done a lot of visualization in my training. I knew it was going to come to Boylston Street. I had a dream. It was me and somebody else on Boylston Street, but I have no idea who won the race or what had happened. So to the race unfolded like you were talking about earlier, it was Boston showed up. I mean, people showed up for the race. Boston Strong, they had a lot of riding on the streets, a lot of posters and things like that. And then every runner was enthusiastic to be there to have another chance. And as the race unfolded, basically, start from take it easy. And then the first 5 miles, the Ethiopians, the Kenyans were trying to slow down. And then I'm like, my goal was to win top 3 or personal best. And then the emotion can captivates you a little bit. So when you see the riding on the streets with the chalks, you're like, oh, I got to do it. I got to do it. And then I said, I'm going to go for it at 5 miles because they were trying to tactically slow it down. I said, if I'm going to do win or personal best, I need to push the pace. And then they let me have a little space. And then Joseph Boyd went with me. And then at 8 miles, we were two men the lead and the rest of the pack. Big gap though. And then I don't remember going to the halfway point. And here sometimes athlete been in the zone by Wesley College. There's 13.1 halfway mark.
You didn't stop and get it. You didn't stop and get a kiss.
I didn't stop giving my kiss, and then I didn't even remember going through it. I was so into it. And then about 15 miles into it, 14, I asked the Joseph Boyd, did you see our halfway split? He said no. So I'm like, Boston is all about the title anyway, so it doesn't matter what time, so just keep going. And about 15 miles or so, he bumped into me, and I knew I have done the Boston Marathon before, and I'm mentally thinking he's getting fatigued. Just keep pushing and pushing, get away from him so you can conquer the hill on your own. And the people were excited going to the, like you said earlier, day off in Boston. People were having a great time doing the wave, chanting USA, USA. I started chanting USA, USA with them. But I'm like, focus on the race, focus on the race. And I was hurting pretty bad. I was having a big issue on my foot. And then basically about 5K to go is when I looked up to my right and I saw an orange shirt. I have no idea who it is, but I'm like, should I slow down and save my energy for Boston, the finish line, or try to maintain the gap or try to extend the gap? I said, just keep pushing and pushing, because if he catch up to you, he's going to have the mental edge. So you might you're going to be equalizer. So I don't want to do that. So I'm like, keep pushing. But again, my foot was hurting pretty bad. And if you look at the video very closely, you can see I'm favoring on my left foot. And then with about 1 mile to go, getting closer and closer, but I knew at one point, like if he was feeling good, he should be next to me, but he must be hurting. Am I willing to hurt a little bit more? And I thought about the prayers, and I thought about the victims that I have on my bib, and just kept pushing and pushing. And then there was one sign that says 1K to go. I'm like, why do they have to have that? We like to go with a Sutko sign with 1 mile to go, but with 3K to go, the Kenyans and Ethiopians going to think 3 minutes for 1K, 3-minute pain. Well, I'm like, 3-minute pain for you too. So just overpass, momentum down the hill, let the gravity take you going up over the ramp, just quick arm action, and then shorter strides. And then Boston Marathon, for those of you who don't know, is point to point. So there's not a lot of turns where you can look back, see how much gap you have. I was doing a lot of glancing back and forth. I was nervous, but right on Hartford, I said, this is it now. Just sprint as hard as you can. By the time he turns, make the gap look bigger. Hopefully he will get mentally defeated somewhat. And then I was left on Boylston. I crossed myself. I'm like, God, thank you for this opportunity to lead the people, all the people that helped me over the years. Now it looked like it's going to be, the finish line is right there, but we know for a fact that many races have been lost. So I'm like, don't cramp up. Don't do something stupid. Just keep going. And then the police were escorting me. So if I pick it up, they're going to pick it up. So they were almost like my pace setters. If I slow down, they're going to slow down. And well, I just kept pushing and pushing. What a great honor it was to be able to be the first American to win it since 1983. And chanting USA, USA, where the bombing happened a year ago, was just a catastrophic. We can't get the lives back. We can't fix the limbs that people lost. But it was just a great magnitude of what God had planned for me. I know that day, with your prayers and other people's blessings, I feel like I was on this earth to be impactful through the sport of running. Well, coming across the finish line, my wife, Jordanis, was right there, gave me a big hug. And
She almost knocked you down.
see, I don't want to say that, but he saw the wins, what happened there. But yeah, I was going forward. Every ounce of my body was squeezed in to get to that finish line, and she was there, excited, obviously, for me. She saw how hard I work, how much sacrifice she has made, how much sacrifice I have made to be able to just this day that we dreamed of. It was becoming a reality on the most important day of return of the Boston Marathon, and it was a blessing. And then obviously, I looked into the heavens. I kind of came across the finish line like this. I was like, what such a relief, because it was a huge, huge victory, not only for me, but for my family, for the community of running, for Boston, for the universal global, what it means to be able to just, the Boston is the Olympics for the everyday athlete, and to be able to win that on that day still kind of gives me goosebumps still.
I know what it does us. It does us as well. I have the moment that you cross the finish line immortalized in a painting by our good friend Joey Longoria, who's a tremendous artist, and it's in my office, my home office. And so when I sit at my desk, that's what I see is the image of you crossing the finish line with your arms raised up in the air. And as you cross the finish line, it's one of my favorite moments of all time captured there in that painting. I've watched the race, and you can pull it. Y'all should pull it up on YouTube and watch this race. It's amazing. Meb, the other runners kind of wanted to slow the pace down, and you were running what you were comfortable with and running along at a nice pace. And so they let you go out. And at one point you had over a minute lead. I think it was 1:12 at one point, which is an unbelievable lead among professional runners. And then Wilson Chibet, who was the orange singlet that was behind you that you saw, he got it down to 6 seconds at one point. And every time I watch it, I still get nervous. I still get nervous that Wilson's going to catch you. So anyway, Randy, tell us a little bit about your race.
So that 2014 race I ran really, really well for about 12 miles. And then I hit a wall, which I've never hit a wall in a race. I pushed for about another 4 miles and realized at about mile 16 that if I kept trying to push, I wasn't going to finish. So I had to start walking some. I remember at one point, Barbara and Caroline were concerned that they might not get into the grandstands until before I finished, if I ran what I was hoping to run.
Right.
So I called my wife at one point while I was walking up a hill, and she answered the phone with not a hello or anything like that. It was like, why are you calling me? And so I told her, I said, I'm not going to be there that quickly, so don't rush. And so I struggled for those last few miles, but there was no way I wasn't going to finish. I walked when I had to, and then I made a decision that when I got to the place where the police had stopped me the year before, I would run from there to the finish no matter how bad it hurt.
So my race was similar because it got hot that day. It's in the afternoon. You remember, Meb was able to do his in 2 hours and 8 minutes. It takes Randy and me a lot longer to run a marathon. And so we're out there a long time. The pavement was hot. It got up into the 80s, I believe, that afternoon. And I struggled as well. I probably walked most of the last 10 miles. Every time I went by a medical tent, I said, there's one I didn't go in. So it was a struggle, but the inspiration of knowing that our good friend Meb had won, I'll be damned if I was going to let Meb cross the finish line and me not.
That's right.
So it was something that we had to pursue.
Did you guys hear the news when you were on the course?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
And of course, Meb, remember, you got a head start.
I did.
We let you have a head start, so no wonder you finished ahead of us. So
my Alabama friends are nice, so they let me have the head start.
last question. How has this impacted you spiritually, Meb?
It had impacted me in a big way, just because for me, that 7th grade physical education class that I ran in 7th grade when I first came to the United States, I didn't speak a word of English, but it helped me be a confident person, helped me be a better student. And through running, I met so many people, great people over the years. And that has been an amazing journey to let my dad become safe from war-torn country to walk over 225 miles. And at one point of that walk, I know he was gun pointed. If that trigger went off, that none of this would have been possible. So I was always a believer, but this time and moment to be able to be in Boston, to kind of put exclamation mark of my career and what my purpose on earth was, to be able to help out with the Meb Foundation. And that's why I'm going back again on my 10-year anniversary, just because I was asked to be part of the broadcast. But I said, I have to be able to run for a cause for the Meb Foundation to bring attention and fundraise for it. And so, yes, God has blessed me indeed to be able to say I ran my fastest. We can put limits on ourselves, but it always happens in God's time. It was that much more sweeter because, I mean, I feel like physically, I was the most fittest in 2006, where I went world record pace, and I thought should have won that race to this day. But it doesn't happen when you want it or when you think you deserve it, but it always happens in God's time. And to be able to run my PR, people say, how'd you run to 208:37? It's all in God's hand. I should have run, in my design, my will, I should have run 206, 205, or 207 a lot of times in Chicago, or one time in Chicago or London, where I had other times, or my fitness in 2004 when I won the silver medal. That's probably when my prime. But my mom always says, the person thinks it, God finishes it. So for me, that's what I feel like. I was destined to be able to have that day, and it was a miracle. This miracle through God. I just said there's a higher power. I feel that day, my goal was to win top 3 or run a personal best, and he helped me do that all at once, and almost at 39 years old. So it's just pure incredible.
And it's that trust in God's will is amazing. And I learned a long time ago, particularly coming to grips with beginning my sobriety journey, that Jack's will doesn't work very well. God's will always ultimately prevail and do that. So, and Randy, I know you and I have talked many times on runs that we've talked about our spiritual lives and everything. Any impact regarding you and your spirituality on this event?
Yeah, I think for me, I have to go back to that 2013 race first, because I remember I went into that race with a goal to run the race in 4 hours. I'd never done that before. I crossed the start line at 10:49. So the whole race, my mindset was I've got to be at the finish line at 2:49. Probably about mile 18, 19, somewhere in there, I got a cramp in my quad, kind of in that little teardrop part of the quad by the knee that I'd never had a cramp in before, never had a cramp in since, that slowed me down. It was frustrating at the moment because I had to walk a little bit to loosen it up. But it was later when I realized that bomb went off at 2:49 that I knew why that happened. So I realized at that point that I was sort of coasting through a lot of things in my life, and I couldn't coast anymore. I had to start really being more intentional. I got an opportunity to tell my story a lot. It just kind of gave me a new purpose and a new focus.
Yeah. Yeah. I told you that I thought God reached down and grabbed your leg.
Yeah.
Because that's, you were on track. You were running well. Both of us were running well. I was going to PR in 2013 and have my best race. So it's amazing how his will always will prevail, and we need to trust it and let it work. Randy, you have a blog people can follow that I think if you want to read some interesting stories, runningrandy.wordpress.com is a great place to go look at some stories from Randy's years of experience in running, and his running every day for now almost 4,500 days, at least a mile, but you've averaged about 5 miles a day during that period.
I'm averaging about 6.5.
Okay. All right. It's a lot. The Meb Foundation at mebfoundation.org is a place that you can go and support Meb's work. And he's written 3 books, Run to Win, Meb for Mortals, and 26 marathons. They're all amazing. Randy and I are in Meb for Mortals briefly. So anyway, see if you can find it, buy that book, and see if you can find where Randy and I are mentioned in the book. You can reach me at eaterfinancialwellness.com or info@eaterfw.com, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, I'm Wendy McConnell.
Thank you for listening to the BamCam podcast with Jack Burnette and Allison Castellano from Eater Financial Wellness, a financial advisory practice at RFG Advisory. To get in touch with us, visit today's show notes or go to our website at www.eaterfinancialwellness.com. That's ITER financialwellness.com. And please click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Information here may be provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither our guests nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of our guest. They do not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, its employees, or its clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by RFG Advisory or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives of Private Client Services, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, LLC, RFG Advisory or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Private Client Services and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place. RFG Advisory is an SEC-registered investment advisor. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of RFG by the Commission, nor does it indicate that RFG or any associated investment advisory representative has attained a particular level of skill or ability.